afternoon. Today's meeting of the Housing Subcommittee of General Laws will come to order. The clerk will open the roll for attendance. Members will indicate their presence on the electronic voting board, which works. The clerk will close the roll. A quorum is present. Better than quorum. We got perfect attendance. All right. Our first bill is patron is not here, so I see that we've got Delegate Helmer here for House Bill 151. Delegate Helmer, tell us what your bill does, and yeah, do that. And we'll decide what to do next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subcommittee. Today we're speaking about House Bill 151, which is an update to the High Performance Building Act. It clarifies the statute for local governments. This was a bill we passed with bipartisan support, I think 2-3 years ago. A few things that it does: just updates the term appropriate resilience. It clarifies that school districts are included. It simplifies the electric vehicle charging infrastructure language that was there. We were asked for some simplification. Provides a new alternative for what kind of certifications you can seek. There was a desire for more flexibility. And it allows Virginia Energy, the governor's office, to provide some local assistance. Mr. Chair, there is a substitute as well.
So is there a motion on the substitute? It's been moved and properly seconded that we adopt the substitute. As many in favor of that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The substitute is properly before us. So Delegate Helmer, is there anything in particular about the substitute we ought to know about?
The substantive change in the substitute, working in coordination with the administration, we just require the localities to provide the information that the governor's office, well, not the governor's office, but the Department of Energy will need in order to facilitate some of the reporting on this, rather than requiring them to go get it. So it just removes some of the fiscal impact of the bill.
Thank you, Delegate Helmer. And Council and Clerk, is the substitute available online? Okay, so the substitute is available for folks online. All right, so I'll pause for just a second to make sure everybody has a chance to scroll through that and trust but verify Delegate Helmer's description of the substitute.
And Mr. Chair, I'd offer the delegates, that the members, that it's the changes in language are from line 80 onwards.
Thank you. All right, are there any questions from members of the committee for the bill's patron? All right, is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill? Please step forward, identify yourself.
Good afternoon, my name is Chelsea Harnish. I'm the Executive Director of the Virginia Energy Efficiency Council, and we support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the bill? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the bill? All right, seeing none, we're back to the committee. Does that testimony elicit any further questions from members of the committee?
Votes are required. Do you want to remote speaker?
Oh, for this bill?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's not this. It's my mistake.
Okay. No one online to speak to this bill. So I've heard a motion from Delegate Price, seconded by Delegate Coiner, to report the substitute with substitute. All right. The clerk will open the roll. Members will indicate their votes on the electronic voting board. Clerk will close the roll, and the bill reports with substitute by a vote of 7-1. Thank you, Delegate Helmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the subcommittee.
Delegate Gardner, you've been sitting there, and I know you've got another place you said you had to be. I think yours is a relatively straightforward piece of legislation. So Delegate Gardner has House Bill 312 on rental conveyances, leases, and assignments, right on our wheelhouse here in housing. Delegate Gardner, why don't you tell us what exactly your bill does?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You can go ahead. It should be green. So if
Okay. This bill was brought to us by the Virginia Bar Association, and it cleans up language in the code section relating to the rights and protections afforded to both landlords and to tenants in residential properties survive the transfer of a property. What it does is just move 4 provisions from non-residential tendencies into the chapter governing leases sections of the code. We actually have Eric Link here from the Virginia Bar if you have any questions.
Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee? So I'll just say, if I recall correctly, we recodified 55 to 55.1 about maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And this is just essentially a cleanup bill.
Yes.
To bring over some stuff that got missed by the Code Commission in all their great efforts. Is that right?
That's correct, sir.
All right. Anybody here to speak in favor? You can just wave your hand if you're in favor of the bill. Anybody here opposed? All right. The committee It's been moved and properly seconded the bill report. Clerk will open the roll. Members will indicate their votes on the electronic voting tablets. Clerk will close the roll. Bill reports 8-0. You can skip full committee. Thank you very much, Delegate Gardner. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. We've got, I'm going to go ahead and take up, Delegate Converse Fowler's not here. So I got Delegate Ballard next on my list. Delegate Ballard, you have HB 304.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. So I do have HB 304. This was a piece of legislation that was requested by one of my localities, which is Rich Creek, located in beautiful Giles County, Virginia. Essentially, this legislation creates the Virginia Firefighting Facilities Grant Program. And so this is a program where fire departments can apply on a first-come, first-served basis for funds used to build and maintain their firefighting facilities. There was a budget amendment submitted that accompanies this bill because my understanding is there would have to be a new position created to manage this fund, and so that budget amendment was submitted. It's pretty straightforward. It's just creating this grant program, and I do have queued up, hopefully online, the Rich Creek town manager as well as the assistant fire chief for the Rich Creek Volunteer Fire Department. They requested and they would like to speak to it, Mr. Chairman.
I'll make sure they have the opportunity to do that at the appropriate time. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee for Delegate Ballard? All right, is there anyone in the room wishing to speak in favor of the bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jennifer Pike on behalf of the Virginia Professional Firefighters, and we support this bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Joe Lurch with the Virginia Association of Counties in support of the bill. It's desperately needed, particularly for a lot of our members who are struggling in providing these first responder services and facilities. So thank you.
All right. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak against the bill? All right, with that, let's go ahead and move online to Mr. Mervyn Swartout. Sorry, Mr. Swartout from the town of Rich Creek. Is he available? If you'll go ahead and bring him on camera and you can unmute your microphone.
Mr. Speaker, Merv Swartout. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Would you like to speak in favor of this bill?
Thank you. Thank you. I want to thank you for the consideration and Delegate Ballard for considering this. This is desperately needed in facility to get these facilities up and running for us small towns that are hurting since COVID, and we've lost all our tax base. So we are definitely in support of this, and hopefully it'll get through your process and get approved.
Thank you. And we have Mason Boggs.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Boggs, go ahead.
Yes, sir. This is Mason Boggs. I'm the Assistant Chief for Rich Creek Fire Department. I want to speak in support of this bill. I've been a member for over 30 years now as a volunteer, and we're in desperate need of a facility along with all the other local volunteer departments in the county. And there's no way we can raise the money alone. There's no way we can raise it through tax base. We're just asking to please consider this to make it feasible for us to have somewhere to house our equipment and safely house our volunteers providing this service to our communities.
All right, thank you, Mr. Boggs. So, Dr. Boggs, I have a couple questions. I'm struggling with this one because I understand the need for this legislation. I understand the difficulty that folks are having. I know we've got in the fire programs, we have a method for folks to apply for funds for training facilities. It doesn't require a special fund. That's a little bit, it's in the same part of the code that's a little different, and there's a way to do that. And I don't know if y'all considered, somehow combining the firehouse with the training facility to access that. We also have another program, a fund. We do have a fund, but it doesn't have, it's a little more straightforward. This is, I guess what I'm struggling with is the difference between, is it first come, first serve, or is it going to be based on a need-based criteria? And the bill seems to be sort of internally conflicted about that a little bit. It says on the one hand, it's a first come, first serve. On the other hand, the department's going to develop criteria to see who's eligible to pull from it, and how we're going to define need. I understand the intent is to help rural, very small localities, but Fairfax could make an argument that given the demands of their very large population, that they have similar needs. So who's going to be able to access this fund, or are we just going to leave that up to the department to sort of figure out who's actually eligible to grab the money?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that's a great question. So the bill is drafted. It's worded first come, first serve. As you noted later in the bill, it does have language that directs the department to implement regulations that puts the parameters on how you would go about applying, the criteria for applying, and how those things would be considered. Just candidly, if it's the will of the subcommittee, I would be fine amending it to however you see fit to get this across the finish line. I mean, this basically stems from a situation where you have the town of Rich Creek that asked me to carry it. There are just a few hundred people there, and there is no way in the world they can raise the funds to build a new facility or even maintain their existing facility, which is well over 100 years old. And so we've tried every avenue. To the other part of your question, Mr. Chairman, we have looked at other programs. We have looked at other funds. We even went to Congressman Morgan Griffith's office to try to figure out something on the federal level. It seems I've run into a roadblock at every turn because the challenge is when you're trying to build something new. That's the rub. And this was designed to hopefully just get our foot in the door and establish a fund where localities like Rich Creek and other very remote areas that are in my district can get something to store and house their firefighting equipment because it's desperately needed, Mr. Chairman.
One other question. How much was the, you put in a budget amendment, what's the cost? I know it's only a position, but we're talking about $100,000, $150,000?
Mr. Chairman, the budget amendment, it's item 406, according to the Department of Fire programs, it's a approximate cost of $117,000, and that's to establish an additional full-time position that would essentially carry out the needs of kind of managing this grant program. So the way I understand it is with the existing personnel, if you add another grant program, they couldn't manage it, so they're going to have to add someone else.
You'll be the one that's going to put them over the edge. I've heard that before as well, Delegate Ballard. Thank you.
I understand, Mr. Chairman.
All right, are there any other questions from members of the subcommittee? All right, I think we're ready for a motion. It's been moved and properly seconded that we report and refer to appropriations. Clerk will open the roll. Clerk will close the roll. Delegate Ballard, look forward to working with you on something that we can do here that can help address this situation. I don't know if this bill is the right vehicle for it, but you worked very hard on it, and we'll work together to see what we can do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the committee's consideration.
The motion, the bill fails to report by a vote of 3 to 5. Sorry, George. All right. Next up, I see we have Delegate Converse Fowler, and then we'll have Delegate McQuinn to bring us home. So, Delegate Converse Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. HB 133 creates the Emergency Response Toxic Exposure Grant Fund and Program. So this is geared more towards the people that are affected by toxic exposure. The purpose of this grant fund and program is to support local government employees who respond to events that are formally declared as a disaster by the Commonwealth or by the locality. When natural or man-made disasters strike our communities, our first responders do not hesitate to go in and putting their own lives at danger. As an example of this, let me skip to the chase. On Good Friday in 2012, a catastrophic event took place in Virginia Beach as a Navy FA-18 Hornet jet fighter crashed just moments after takeoff from Naval Air Station Oceana in the Mayfair Mews apartment complex injuring 7. The event is now known as the Good Friday Miracle, as there were no fatalities to the event. A colleague of mine, this is when I was teaching, was that he lost his home when that happened in the apartment complex. But it is true that we didn't lose anyone and there were no fatalities. When looking at the event through the lens of the fateful day and the weeks after, they declared the emergency, and 500 Virginia Beach first responders and employees were were there to secure the event, to secure the site. And as you can imagine, an event like this involving a high technology piece of military equipment, it crashing into an apartment complex to homes more than 100 residents, exposing not just the first responders, but the employees that had to deal with the cleanup. Things that I can't really say, like PFAS, the perifluorooctane sulfonic acid. And those are forever chemicals because these toxic materials do not leave your system. Since that day, a number of city staff who worked that crash scene have contracted different forms of cancer, some of whom did not survive. In response, the city has offered specialized screenings for more than 50 types of cancers to the firefighters who worked the crash. But of course, there are out-of-pocket expenses, and then there are so many employees beyond firefighters who do not have a cancer presumption. So while the incident in Virginia Beach is the motivation for this legislation and fund, there are likely other events across the Commonwealth that we can support, and it is inevitable the future events will take place that will need this support. The program would be administered by the Department of Fire Programs. The Department of Fire Programs will establish the guidelines and criteria for the grant eligibility. And if there is no money, then the grant opportunity would be there, but it has to be funded, so it would have to be referred to appropriation. But getting this started would be a win for all employees that have to deal with disaster situations like this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Delegate Converse-Feller from members of the subcommittee? All right. Are there any members of the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill? If you'll please line up and identify yourself. And
good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. John Wright on behalf of the 10,000 members of the Virginia Professional Firefighters. We support this legislation. Appreciate the delegate bringing it forward. These exposures obviously cause catastrophic illnesses later in life and disease, something that we're very passionate about, protecting our firefighters, specifically in Virginia Beach and throughout the Commonwealth. So we support the legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Brett McKenzie with the City of Virginia Beach. Excuse me. We support this legislation. This was a truly tragic event that took place a decade ago, but since that event, we have been dealing with the ramifications of it throughout our community and throughout our public works and first responder community. So we'd appreciate your support. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to the bill?
Afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee. Spencer Will, I'm with the Department of Fire Programs. We are not necessarily in opposition to the delegates bill, but we do have some concerns about the broad scope of the legislation. Our agency primarily deals with firefighters or related personnel to the fire departments. Rather than emergency service personnel in general, the state separates that amongst multiple agencies. And we're also a little concerned about the terminology local government employee. We feel like that will tie our hands when it comes to dealing with volunteer first responders in the Commonwealth who may be eligible for those grants. So we are in support of any kind of cancer screening and funding that we are able to provide, but we'd like to see some changes in the bill to make sure that we can provide that to all of our state's first responders, not just the ones that are employed by a locality.
if you don't mind, before I let you go, do you have any suggestions for language improvements? Would you provide the bill patient with any suggestions for some line amendments that might help with those concerns?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We did offer some suggested language that was not accepted, changing it from local government employees to public safety personnel. So you remove the employee part, and that kind of gives us that ability to go to the volunteer side of things as well. And other than that, the Senate companion does have a reenactment clause. We are supportive of that because that would give time for the work group to actually define what a toxic event looks like, who needs to be covered, and then we can come back to the General Assembly with that report. Right now, there is no definition in the code of what a toxic event even is, so that's where we're going to have to start. We're also not hazmat, that's FEDEM, so again, it kind of is not within our agency scope, and we need some time to figure out what that looks like rather than providing to all local government employees. We don't want to exclude anybody, but we also know the fiscal impact of including every local government employee is just not something within our scope.
All right. I hear you, and we'll get to you in 1 second, Doug. I do want to just respond briefly that the fund itself is created. I mean, so the only funds can only come from within. Payouts can only come from within the fund. So I'm not terribly concerned about that. It's as broad as it's going to be, but go ahead, Delegate.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I wanted to address the amendments that were proposed. We do want to keep it broad. We do want to include those in public employees, like those that work in public works. Those are employees that often get left behind. But we absolutely, and it is the stance of the city too, that we would want to include volunteer as well. So if there's a way to include that, we would love to do that. So.
All right. So again. Right, because I heard sort of two different concerns, which is it was on the one hand too broad, but also too narrow, right? And so maybe just didn't fit the right categories, which is I get it. Where's the language that describes who exactly? I know we don't usually do this in this committee, but if it's a small change, what line do we talk about who's eligible? Is that on? I got the PDF in front of me. Council, do you? Line. Okay, so on line 31, it says providing support to local government employees. And could we just insert after employees or volunteer firefighters? Is that a defined term somewhere? So council's asking me if we can adopt an amendment like that in concept. So to insert at that point a legally sufficient description that would capture volunteer firefighters. Is that a motion that the committee would be willing to entertain?
Mr. Chair, I would maybe not say firefighter specifically. I would just say volunteer emergency services or something along those lines, because you don't want to discount the emergency medical services side of things as well, which Virginia Beach is, their system is volunteer emergency medical services.
So volunteers, is there support on the subcommittee or interest in the subcommittee in inserting something that would capture volunteers?
I would move that amendment in concept.
Is there a second? Mm-hmm. It's been moved and properly seconded. As many as favor of that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right. So conceptually, if this bill moves forward, it would be moving forward with to report and refer to appropriations with an amendment that would capture volunteers on line 31. Should it go forward? All right. Everybody understand procedurally where we are? All right. All right. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to the bill? All right. We don't have anybody online. All right, is there a motion? Or is there any further questions from members of the subcommittee?
Move to report as amended and refer to the Committee on Appropriations. Second.
So moved and properly seconded that we report as amended and refer to appropriations. Seeing no other motions, the clerk will open the roll. I keep wanting to push the wrong tablet. Clerk will close the roll, and the bill reports by a vote of 8-0 with a referral to appropriations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Congress Fowler. All right, Delegate, save the best for last. This is my favorite bill on the docket today. Did I say that out loud? Delegate McQuinn.
Does that mean I'm going to be beat up, Mr. Chairman?
No, I love this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. House Bill 321 is a bill to amend and reenact the Code of Virginia relating to the Line of Duty Act payment to beneficiaries of certain deceased law enforcement officers and firefighters, and et cetera, and including retirees. So this bill is to enhance the protection for families of fallen heroes. It was established in 1972, the Virginia Line of Duty Act, which provides death and disability benefits to families of public safety workers killed or disabled as a result of service to the Commonwealth. And this bill was brought to the forefront by Virginia Firefighters Association. So the Line of Duty Act serves as a great protection for these workers and their families. And it is asking that the General Assembly would increase the Line of Duty Act benefits from $25,000 to $100,000 if death occur as a direct or approximate result of performance of their duties. Since its conception or inception, this is it would be the third time. It's only been increased 3 times. And so I'm asking that we would look favorably upon this, and so that, again, we can make certain that families are taken care of to a certain degree as it relates to any of our heroes actually dying in the line of duty. And Mr. Chairman, we do have individuals here today to also speak to this particular issue. I did get a fiscal impact statement just actually before I came down, and so I'm still trying to read it, but it appeared that based on the information, it would be an increase of $635,000 approximately per year to add to the premium.
Right.
I'm sorry, am I doing something? Oh, substitute? Beg your pardon? Amendments. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I do have, and I had it wrote down here, I do want to make a motion to amend this particular legislation from it being agreed upon and from July, I have July 1, 2024, but we want to look at it being effective as of January 1, 2025.
Gotcha.
So make a motion.
A little bit later. All right, so the motion is on line, the motion we'll be entertaining was on line 27 to change July 1st, 2024, strike that and insert January 1st, 2025. Do I hear such a motion? It's been moved. Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and properly seconded. As many as favor of the amendment will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, the bill before us as amended, the bill is now before us as amended with the amendment. Any questions from members of the subcommittee for the patron? I'm sure there are people here to speak in favor of the bill. If y'all want to come on forward. You can be brief. Chairman. Don't talk past the sale, as they say, but.
Again, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jennifer Pike, on behalf of Virginia Professional Firefighters, I'm before you today in support of this bill as it will honor the lives and memories of the men and women in the fire service and law enforcement across the Commonwealth. As Delegate McQuinn stated, the line of duty death benefit for presumptive deaths was enacted in 1972, 52 years ago, and hasn't been increased to date. At today's inflation rate, we should be asking for double this amount. The traumatic death benefit is currently set at $100,000, and we view a presumptive death as no different. In reality, presumptive death victims sometimes suffer longer and incur more debt, which is left as a burden to their families. We've worked with stakeholders on this bill and have come to an agreement to delay the enactment date until January 1st of 2025. I hope it's the pleasure of this committee to do the ethical and right thing and pass this important piece of legislation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, delegates. My name is Keith Andes, President of Richmond Professional Firefighters Association, Local 995. Our 420 members, along with the VPF membership, supports House Bill 321, the Virginia Line of Duty Act established in 1972. Since its inception, the following families of the Richmond firefighters killed in the line of duty have benefited from this legislation. And they are Firefighter G.A. Swanson, Lieutenant J.N. Thomas Jr., Captain G.L. Wyatt, Firefighter Marvin Griffin, Lieutenant Bernard Emerson, Firefighter Billy Harris, Firefighter Joe Mary, Firefighter Lynn Archer, Firefighter Rodney Coles, Battalion Chief Earl Dyer. Unfortunately, with what our heroes are exposed to daily, this benefit is a small way we will show those that are left behind, we will never forget. We wish to thank Delegate McQuinn for her support and look forward to her leadership and seeing that this legislation moves through the General Assembly as signed off on by the governor. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Robert Young, Fairfax County Professional Firefighters and Paramedics, and we rise in support of this legislation. We'd like to thank the patron for sponsoring this legislation. The only thing I have to add to the remarks of the folks who came before me, excuse me, is that this bill, while I'm a firefighter, it does nothing for me, but it takes care of that family that we leave behind should we succumb to these illnesses. Many times when we die in a traumatic way, there is no period of infirmary where we have medical bills and such. But when we have a medical issue, we could be infirm for long periods of time, leaving behind great medical costs to our families. So this bill will go a long way to remedy that for our families. I thank you, and I hope it be the pleasure of this body to pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Stephen Seitz from the city of Fairfax. I'm Assistant Fire Chief there. Also serve as the Fire Marshal, so serve in two roles as a firefighter and a law enforcement officer. So I also represent the Virginia Fire Chiefs Association, and I want to say that we all support this bill, and I would ask for your support in it as well, and thank you, Delegate, for your support. Thank you.
All right. Anybody wishing to speak in opposition to the bill? All right. Any further questions from members of the subcommittee? If not, the committee operates by motion.
Second.
Move to do what?
Report as amended.
The move to report as amended and properly seconded and referred, I wasn't finished, and referred to the Committee on Appropriations. That's where I was getting to that. Everybody understands the motion here? Yeah. Clerk will open the roll. Members will indicate their votes on the voting machines. The clerk will close the roll. The subcommittee recommends reporting and referring with amendment to appropriations by a vote of 8-0. Thank you, Delegate McQuinn. Thank you to everyone who came and testified today. I know you guys have a busy schedule. Is there any other business to come before the subcommittee? If not, the committee shall rise.